Hey all, in this video we're starting perfect competition. And so with perfect competition we're breaking up into two different parts. Part one is what we're looking at this video, which we're going to go over just the characteristics of it and just explaining why it is the way it is. In the second video we're going to be looking at the graph itself and how the graph changes depending on different scenarios that force it to change there. All right, so this is really important because this is the big chunk of Unit 3. And so if you understand this, you understand really everything else about Unit 3 here. All right, so let's get started. All right, so perfect competition. So obviously this is part one. And so we're going to start off with just sort of an introduction, right? What exactly are the four market structures that perfect competition is a part of? And so when we talk about the four market structures, we're going to say every product that is sold, right? Every single product, no matter what you think of, every product that is sold in the market can be considered to be a part of one of the following market structures below. Either perfect competition, monopolistic competition, oligopolies, or monopolies. And so here, these are our four market structures. And so perfect competition is a Unit 3 concept, while monopolistic competition, oligopolies, and monopolies basically make up the entirety of Unit 4. And so that's how we're going to really split up these four different market structures here. And so because of that, there really isn't a need to go over the characteristics of monopolistic competition, monopolies, and oligopolies. So we're just going to go over the characteristics of perfect competition. And so the first one is that there are many identical firms. And so what that means is that each firm is pretty much similar to one another, right? That there really isn't anything differentiating them between firm A and firm B and firm C and firm D and so on and so on and so on. And all of these identical firms sell identical products, meaning each product they sell are perfect substitutes for each other. So if you go to a farmer's market, right, at market stand A, if they're selling strawberries, there's nothing differentiating market stand A strawberries to market stand B strawberries, right? So if you buy market stand B strawberries, you're not really missing out on not buying stand A strawberries there. The third characteristic of perfect competition, there are low barriers to entry. If you want to enter into the market and you want to sell your goods, you are more than welcome and able to do so. And so because of this, the seller has no need to advertise, right? Because there are a lot of identical firms, because all the products sold are identical and they're perfectly substitutable for one another, there is no need to advertise here. The most important characteristic, however, is our last point here, that firms are price takers. Because there are so many firms, because all the products sold are perfectly substitutable and identical, each firm has no control over their price, right? So typically when we think of a firm, we think of, oh, if they want to sell more, they can just decrease the price. Or if they want to sell less, right, they can increase the price. They ever wanted to sell less for some reason. But in a perfectly competitive market structure, firms are price takers. They take whatever price the market tells them to take. In other words, they have no control over price. And this is extremely important, right? That this idea that in a perfectly competitive firm, in a perfectly competitive market structure, these firms are all price takers. And so let's get started in perfect competition here. So why are they price takers? Well, here, because of the fact, right? Because of the fact that they all sell identical products, if one firm charges above the market price, no one is going to buy from them, right? They will just go to other firms. If the products are slightly different, then yes, they can set their own price. But because in perfect competition, all products are the same essentially, if one firm prices their product higher than the other, right? Then that means no one's going to buy from that specific firm because they could just go to another firm and buy basically the same exact product here. Well, the flip side is also true, right? There's no reason to price low because consumers are going to buy just as much at the market price. So for firms in a perfectly competitive market structure, there is no incentive to price higher because they'll lose business. There's no incentive to price lower because they're losing out on revenue because consumers are willing to pay more for their product. And so that is the reason why firms in perfect competition are all price takers. And so since the price is the same at all quantities demanded, in other words, right, the price for one product is $5, the price for the second product is $5, the price for the third product is $5, the price for the fourth product is $5, the demand firm or the demand curve for each firm is perfectly elastic, meaning it's a horizontal straight line. So here, what if you see on the screen right now, right? This right here is our demand curve for a perfectly competitive firm. So a perfectly competitive firm, the demand curve is perfectly horizontal because the price of each good that is sold is the same exact price. And so here, right, the competitive firm is a price taker. That's something we already talked about, right? This idea that they're a price taker. And the price is set by the industry, which you can also say the industry is the same thing as our market, right? Those two terms are interchangeable. And so what we're going to say is that total revenue increases at a constant rate. Because these firms are price takers, right? Total revenue is not going to drastically increase all of a sudden. It's going to increase at a very constant rate here. And so because of this, right, because total revenue increases at a constant rate, our marginal revenue equals average revenue. In other words, we get to something that we're going to call Mr. DARP. Where in a perfectly competitive firm, right, it's really important to differentiate between firm and market. In a perfectly competitive firm, right, our marginal revenue is going to equal our demand, is going to equal our average revenue, and it's also going to be the same thing as our price. Hence, we get to Mr. DARP. DARP. So our marginal revenue curve, our demand curve, is a lot of different things. It means the same exact thing as marginal revenue, as demand, as average revenue, and it also represents our price for a perfectly competitive firm. And so maximizing profit, right? We know with maximizing profit, a firm should produce where marginal revenue equals marginal cost, where MR equals MC. And that's really the golden rule of microeconomics, right? And that's what this slide was designed, right? This is the golden rule, MR equals MC. Well, now, right, let's see that MR equals MC on an actual graph. And so here, right, this is the graph for a perfectly competitive market structure. And you always have to draw both, right? You always have to draw both the industry and market and also the firm. If you just draw the industry, you're just drawing a basic supply and demand graph. However, if you just draw the firm, because the firm and the market are interrelated, because the firms are price takers and they take the price at what the market sets at, you can't draw one without the other. And so here, how this graph works is we have our supply and demand, and we have equilibrium here. Equilibrium states that in the market, right, the equilibrium price is going to be $5. And so because firms are price takers, right, they're going to sell each good at $5 also. So if this equilibrium price and quantity either increases or decreases in the market graph, that means in the firm, our demand curve, which remember is our marginal revenue, average revenue, and price, is also going to increase and decrease dependent on the equilibrium of the industry and market here. And so at the firm, they're still going to be producing where MR equals MC, right? Because demand also equals marginal revenue, right? So this is going to be how much they're producing for each individual firm. And the amount that they're charging or the price is just going to be the price, the equilibrium price of the market itself. And so let's just take a look at the firm graph with the marginal revenue and the marginal cost, the ATC, and eventually we'll add in the AVC as well, right? Because you guys should already be familiar with our supply and demand graph. So here, the first thing you guys should always go to whenever you see a perfectly competitive firm is always go to where MR equals MC. And let's do this in a different color so you guys can see a little bit better, right? Because that is going to tell us how much the firm should produce here. And so where MR equals MC is 7. Right? Where MR equals MC is 7. And then here, the price is going to be $6. So our total revenue is what? Well, our total revenue, remember, is just price times quantity. And so our total revenue, right, if our price is $6 and our quantity is 7, well, our total revenue is going to get us to $42. Or in other words, right, our total revenue is this box shaded in blue right there. Well, yet again, right, if that blue box, right, it represents our total revenue, well, what about our total cost? And this is where students tend to get confused on, and we'll do this in green right here. The total cost here, right, is not at the minimum of the ATC, right? That's where a lot of students want to go. They just want to go to the minimum of the ATC, and they say that's where the cost is going to be. However, if you go to the minimum of the ATC, right, that means that this firm is only producing 5 units. When we know that isn't true, we know because the profit maximized funds, or MR equals MC, that the firm is producing 7 units here. So we can't go to the minimum of this ATC here. Instead, what we have to do is go to where MR equals MC and just see where it hits our average total cost curve on the way down. So right here. And then we're just going to go across, and let's say this is $5 here, right? And so our average total cost is just going to be, right, the $5 times 7. So the average total cost is then $35. So here, this area in green represents the total cost of producing. Well, then where's the profit on this graph, right? So our profit, and we'll do this yet again in purple, right? Or let's do this in light blue again, right? Our profit or a loss, right, is just our total revenue minus our total cost. Well, then that means, right, if our total revenue equals $42 and our total cost equals $35, well, then here, in the box shaded in blue represents, right, it represents our profit, right? They have a profit of $7. In other words, it's the difference of the total revenue and the total cost box. All right. So here, right, let's say market demand falls, right? So let's say our demand curve on our market graph shifts to the left. And so what is going to happen if the price is going to be lowered from $6 to $3? Well, we still follow this marginal revenue equals marginal cost rule. However, the firm will be now making an economic loss, right? Because remember, whenever our market graph changes, it changes the equilibrium where supply and demand meet, which changes our price, our marginal revenue, our demand, our average revenue curve on the firm graph here. And so what we can rename our profit maximizing rule, it's also known as the loss minimizing rule, right? Because if you're trying to maximize profit, at the same time, you're also minimizing the loss. And so let's do a practice one here. So let's look at this, right? Yet again, the first thing you should do is go to where MR equals MC. And so that point still hasn't changed, right? We're still producing 7 units and $6 is still the price. So that means, right, that our total revenue is still this box shaded in red, right? Our total revenue is still 7 units times the $6, which gets us to $42 here. But what's different? Well, now our average total cost is above our marginal revenue demand average revenue price curve. And so when that happens, right? When that happens, and we'll do this in light blue, right? Remember, we don't go to the minimum of the ATC because if we went to the minimum of the ATC, that would imply that this firm is producing 8 units. Well, we know that that is not true. So what are we going to do instead? Well, here we go to where MR equals MC. We go up at the 7 quantity mark to where it intersects with the average total cost curve. We go to the side and at $8. So which means that everything shaded in blue right here, right, is going to represent our total cost. And so our total cost is just going to be the quantity, which is 7, times the $8, which gets us to $56 here. And so where exactly, right, and we'll do this again, right, to make it a little cleaner, right? So like I said, everything in blue right here represents our total cost, and our total cost we said was $56. Our total revenue so was $42, right? And so that means there has to be loss, right? And our loss, right, because we know that our total cost is greater than our total revenue, is going to be $14, right? A negative $14 here. Well, where is our loss on this graph? Well, yet again, it's this area shaded in green right here. It's the difference between our total cost and our total revenue boxes. And then we can also double check it, right? A price is 6 and 8. So we can just take the area of this green box, right? So 7 times 2, which gets us to $14, which we know that is how much loss is being incurred here. And so if you remember from our last video, right, the shutdown rule is if the firm can cover its variable costs, the firm should continue to produce. If the firm cannot cover their variable costs, the firm should then shut down. Why? Well, because the price is below the average variable, the firm is losing more money than their fixed costs, and so it's in their best incentive, right, to shut down, right, to minimize their losses here. And so here, just real quick, should this firm shut down or not? Well, the answer is this firm should shut down. Why? Well, remember, we look at this time, we look at the minimum of the ADC, or we could even look right here, right? This point where the MR equals MC, and we go up, it's above the price. It's above our marginal revenue price curve. And because of that, the firm should shut down here. And so let's wrap it up, right? So what are the different characteristics of the MR equals MC rule? Well, the good news is it applies to all market structures. So we're talking about perfect competition now in Unit 3. In Unit 4, we're going to go over the other 3 market structures: monopolies, oligopolies, monopolistic competition. This MR equals MC rule, this profit maximizing rule, applies to each and every single one of these 4 market structures. Number 2, the rule only applies if the price is above the AVC. The reason for that is because if the price is below the AVC, or in other words, the average variable cost is above our price, the firm should just shut down, right? So they're not going to be maximizing profit, they're minimizing loss. And so that's why the MR equals MC rule doesn't necessarily apply if the firm just shuts down when our price is below the AVC here. And so this last point, we're doing a little bit of math here with the transitive property, right? Because we can say MR equals MC, and then in a perfectly competitive firm, we said, right, that our demand curve equals our marginal revenue curve, equals our average revenue curve, or equals our price curve. We can rewrite this marginal revenue equals marginal cost curve to say our marginal revenue equals price, right? So in other words, at the end of the day, in perfect competition, each firm is going to be making a normal profit. They're going to break even and make 0 economic profit here. All right, so that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you guys learned a lot, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.